Okay, today we're starting some inside test. We'll talk about things to do with bones, and that is that the Mechaber in the first din says that when you want to decide whether something is Batul B'Shishim or not, something treif found something kosher or something like that, then what you do is you only have to think about the meat, the muscle part of what's in there, and you don't have to worry about the bones. When the cheshbon is there 60 times as much heter as this, so you don't have to think about the bones. The bones part that are in there don't count. So I'm going to tell you first about a Gemara. That's obviously that's talking about it, and we'll go to some kind of applications of where it's negate to us lamaisa besides to that very specific case. So there's a carbon ale nazir, and one part of that carbon, the zroya, is only mutter for kahanim. The rest of the meat is mutter to all yidden. So the Torah says you should cook them all these pieces together, and the Gemara says that you could figure out from that if you can cook it all together, how could you cook it together when one part is only for kahanim and the rest is for everybody else? It must be that all the blios coming out of the zroya, which is the part for kahanim, are going to be bottle in the rest of the animal. Okay, and by looking at that, the Gemara says we could figure out how much it takes to be mevatel something. So the Gemara says like this: it says if you hold that the whole zroya gives out tam, the meat and the bones give out tam, then there's 60 times the animal is 60 times the size of the zroya with its bones, so that you learn from there that bitul happens b'shishim. If you think that bones do not give out tam, so then the ratio of animal to meat is 100 to 1, because there's a lot of bone in a zroya. The zroya is the forearm. There's a lot of bone in that. So we take out all the bones, then it would be 100 times to 1. So from there we learn out that bitul needs 100 times to 1 to be vatal tam, not 60 times to 1. Okay, so this the Torah telling you that you could cook the zroya together, the zroya with the rest of the animal, teaches us whether bitul is b'shishim or b'meya. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. So the Torah says, well, since we all know that the halacha is that bitul is b'shishim, we all know that's obvious. By the time you got to Simon Side, for sure you know that. We all know that. So it must be that tam coming out of bones is usher. Because that's what the Gemara said. The idea of shishim is because you need to be mevatel the bones also, and then there's only 60 times as much. Okay, that Torah brings such a shine hold like that, but others disagree, and that is that's what our din says, that bones are not nice and tam. There's no tam coming out of the bones by themselves. So the question is, okay, so we have a problem, because if the bones are not if we're saying bones don't give tam, that's what our din says. Then, but the Gemara says that will be the sheet that says bitul needs 100 to 1. So make up your mind, which one is it? So there's a few different answers. The Shach says, from Haran, he says the Gemara was talking about soft bones, what we would call cartilage. Okay, so those bones are nice and tam, but regular bones like hard bones, what we would call a bone, those taka mutter. So our din is talking about hard bones. The Gemara is talking about soft bones, and the Gemara and our din are all happy together. Okay, and the Bishesu says no. Even though the Gemara says the way I told you, the Gemara says that these two things are totally separate. Whether bones are nice and tam or bones are not nice and tam depends on whether things are about the b'shishim b'meya. He says it's not true. Really, they're two independent dinim. Tam is bought the b'shishim. The Gemara that brought this right from the El Nazir is just an asmachta. It's not a real limud. It's not that we learn it out from there that's what it is. It's just an asmachta. So therefore we could paskin both ways. We could paskin the bitul needs shishim, because that's what, so to speak, we think the truth is, and we could also paskin that bones are not nisim tam, because like I said, we think that's what the truth is also. Okay, but now both of these shatim, whichever one you're going to like, goes together. There's a teres keilim. Teres keilim says, it says in the pasuk mi b'sarim mosechelu. It's talking about treif animals. Mi b'sarim mosechelu, and the teres keilim says you're only not allowed to eat the basar, but the bones and the hooves you're allowed to eat. Meaning mitaraisa, you're allowed to eat them. Of these non-kosher animals, you're allowed to eat. Okay. Now, if we open up the Rambam sounds like he learned like the Beis Yosef. The Rambam says, "Uminayin samchu chachamim al shir shishim." Have the chacham? What's the asmachta? To say shishim is from these psukim of El Nazir, as if it's just a asmachta, not a real thing. But when the Rambam brings this teres keilim that I told you that says mi b'sarim mosechelu, that only basar is asr but not bones, he says he sounds like it's asr. It is asr d'rabanan. He says alpha pishu asr hari is a potter, which is mashma that's asr d'rabanan. And this Rambam, this second Rambam that says alpha pishu asr hari is a potter, is part of the big machlokes about whether gelatin from animal bones is mutter. So I'm going to tell you. I mean, there are other parts of the shaila, but one part of the shaila revolved around this ram like this. So Reb Chaim Ozer said that the pshat is the answer to the question we asked beforehand is like the Ran or the Shach says that the only ones that are usher that are nice and tam are soft bones. When the Rambam says Afa Bishu usher Haris Potter, he's talking about these soft bones, meaning like cartilages and things like that. They're not hard, and but hard bones are 100% mutter. There's no issa to them at all. Okay, and therefore, if you make gelatin from hard bones or from hides, which are also considered not, it's in the same category, with no meat attached to them, then they're completely mutter. Okay, that's one part of the shaila. What's mutter. Now, before we go on, I have to tell you that part of the heter is only if you make it from bones, okay, or if you make it from beef hides. Okay, but nowadays almost all the gelatin that you see on the market is made from pig skins. Okay, and the pig skins is a Gemara, it's a Mishnah, and the Ram brings it also if that makes you feel better. Who says that they are also just like meat. Okay, there are some that basar is like meat, and one of them is pig skins, which is what they make gelatin out. So that heter of Reb Chaim Ozer is not negated to almost all the gelatin that's on the market. It's as b'derech kal, that's what it's made from. Okay, so
those that give the texture, right? I think they don't do it from pig skin oil.
Well,
at least some of them.
If they're trying to follow Reb Chaim Ozer, then they would not be making it from pig skins, right? They would make it from beef hides or from animal bones.
Bovine gelatin. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now you should know also there's a before we go on with the shaila with gelatin. I'm getting back to gelatin in a second. There's a tshuva at the end of the Sefer Minchas Yaakov, printed in the back of Teres Chatas, and he says like this: the Mechaber says, I feel bad that I didn't. There's a bunch of things I would have wanted to put on the screen today, but I didn't get around to it. He says like this: the Mechaber says like this in Simon Pei Zayin. He says these things that you can't cook with milk. I'm going to read it to you. Or gidim atzamas ikre karnayim tilafayim harakim. Okay, so the Minchas Yaakov understands. The Minchas Yaakov understands that the word harakim goes on tilafayim, but everything else it makes no difference whether they're hard or soft. They're completely mutter. They're usher. They are usher to cook with milk. Okay, the Prima Garden is not convinced. He's not so sure that that's correct, and he thinks that harakim maybe goes on everything. Yeah, so it's a shiloh over there whether that does or doesn't apply to when the word harakim, this thing we're talking about soft bones, whether soft is different than hard. It's a shiloh how to read that mechaber, which one is going on. Okay, so that's I told you. Reb Chaim Ozer says that the Rambam is only when the Rambam says that it's usher, is only talking about soft bones, cartilages. And Rabban Kotler comes from a different angle, and he says this that the Torah says, which the Torah's keilim says, based on the pasuk, that bones are mutter, is because bones and hides are not edible, and we understand things that are not edible are not usher. He says, but that's not an inherent heter. It's not really mutter. It's that while it's inedible, you're not allowed to eat it. There's like a heter on top of the isser. Really, a bone is part of an animal. It's from a horse. Okay, so a horse is treif. So the bone of the horse is also treif, but it happens to be bones are inedible, and therefore you're not. You could, so to speak, you can eat the bone. He says, but if you take the bone and make it edible, it goes back to its original isser. It's a piece of a horse. If this part of the horse would become edible, then it would be also. He says, and that's what happens when you make gelatin. Basically, what you do with gelatin is you strip away other parts of the bone. You don't change anything. There's nothing changed in it. There are people who thought maybe it should be nishtan. He says there's nothing changed about it. You strip away the other parts of the bone, leaving you with this gelatin part, and now all of a sudden it became an ingredient, and you can make yogurt out of it. Okay, now it's a fine regular ingredient. So
the veil lager would not include that.
Again,
the veil lager, the
so he said that din of nevel that's roy lager is only while it's not roy lager. But if you make it roy lager, if you make it that it becomes what? Yes, the chavdas about it. I believe he talks about it.
How does he know that? Maybe fakert. Maybe punk fakert.
So the tshuva is
Russia. So it's mufka.
So I don't remember, but it's a really long tshuva. Okay, you could it is it's a long tshuva. I don't remember what his rayas are. That's the tshuva is it a real heter or is it just a temporary heter?
You think there is, right? Because why does it have to say that? It's something's not really.
It's all part of it. That's the chavdas shaila, and that's the tshuva. This is the tshuva shots. He said, is it a real heter, like a permanent heter, or is it a temporary heter? Okay, and that's what the whole tshuva is about. To say no, it's only temporary.
China from the place. This whole chiluk. And the second one said that anybody should be mutter. The basar should be usher. Basar should be usher when it's done by anybody yaimai, because now we're lachila.
Yeah.
So no shaykhs. Anyway, lachila.
It's a real heter.
Right.
Okay. It has to do with the chavzas. I believe Rabban brings the chavzas. I assume so. Okay. And the last is that Ramosha says, he says, it's true, the Ram is talking, when he says it's aser, he's talking about hard bones and soft bones. And the Torah's keilim is talking about that also, they're mutter midaraisa, but both of them are aser midrabanan. So he says, so the gelatin will be aser midrabanan, because even though the Torah's keilim says that bones is maybe sarmos echel, but bones are mutter, that only means mutter midaraisa, but midrabanan they still gonna both be aser. Okay, so before we go,
so how many holds the part of the arm is only in the soft bones?
Right, the whole shaila is all about soft, but bones is 100% mutter. He holds it 100% mutter. Okay, so anyhow, again, before I move on from gelatin, I'm just telling you that most of what we just said is not to negate us because they make it from pigs, and pigs pig skins are considered royal achil. Okay, now there's another thing you make from bones.
Obviously, there is bovine gelatin. I've seen it around.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't say this not. I said, but when you stand that you pick up a package in the store.
It could be keilim, the same keilim I use for pig one. So even with the chaim is heter.
No. So you forget because the din our din is that you don't have to worry about Blios from bones. We don't worry about Blios from bones. You walked in too late.
But if you have Blios, of the pig in the gelatin.
Oh, the big skin. You're saying because it's not bone, maskim. Okay, I hear that. Okay. I don't think that's their biggest problem, but yes, that's what the tikva is. It's about the.
If you go with the Ramaiz,
yes. Okay. Yes, you could say that. Okay. Now there's another thing called glucosamine and chondroitin. They're related to each other. People take them for arthritis, and they tend to come from shark cartilage and the soft shells of crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. I'm reading off my paper. Okay. So those are all things that are soft, sort of what we would call soft bones. They're not bones, they're soft bones, and therefore those things everyone will agree is aser. There's also such thing called shellfish broth. Okay, in case you're really hungry, shellfish broth people make also made from these soft shells. So you should just know that it is possible. There are people who make glucosamine from synthetically. It's a fermentation. There's a way to make it. There's a way to get kosher glucosamine, not made from these shark cartilages and things like that.
Made from what?
I don't remember. It's a fermentation. It's made totally from nothing, like so to speak, from nothing sensitive at all. But it has hashgacha on it. And it seems, I don't know, this is like a do-it-yourself at home. If you cook bones at home, take like kosher bones, like go to the supermarket and buy kosher bones, and you cook them for long enough, you can make your own glucosamine. Okay, in case a person has arthritis and they want to take care of it, they can take care of it. Supposedly, there's such a thing. Okay, figure out how to make the recipe. I don't know. Okay, now, so till now I told you that everybody assumes that gelatin made from animal bones are aser. Either you say like a baron that it's aser because it's aser midaraisa because now you made it edible. That's one possibility. Or you say it's aser midarabanan like Moshe said. Okay, but that's what we do in practice. We all assume that gelatin is aser, right? We're not going like a prime aser. Okay. Now, seemingly. And this is a question, really. Seemingly, we should say the exact same thing about oyster shells. Okay, if we say that gelatin made from beef bones is considered aser, either midaraisa or midrabanan. So if we make something edible out of oyster shells, it should be the same thing. Either we say like a baron that it's aser because we made it into something edible. That's one choice. Or like Rav Moshe that the bones might be mutter midaraisa, but it's aser midrabanan. That's what we should say. Okay, except go figure. But we all use that every single day. We use all the time, which is calcium is made from oyster shells. Okay, it's calcium. It's not only that; it's group 1. It's made from oyster shells. The common way to make calcium is make it from oyster shell.
Why are you assuming to be medamed? You're taking any part of any creature that's not kosher, that's not royal achila. I mean, there's a pasuk, there's a rebbe, all these. I don't know, there's a puzzle with all these different parts. Now, how do you know to take any part of any?
What do you want to say it is? You want to say it's more aser? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know. No. Maybe a shell is different. Maybe a shell of something is different. Then it's
more aser or less aser. Which one do you want it to be? There's an animal. There's an animal. Why should it be less usher? This is animal that walks around. Okay, this shellfish. It's got all these parts to it. So the only way to say it's mutter is to say it's one of these extraneous parts like bones and horns and hooves. But otherwise, it's the animal. I mean, that's part of the thing that what it is.
You want to be marba, any part of any creature is not real achila.
No.
You want to include.
No, I want
no. Bones. You want to say it's the same category as bones.
No. That's the second step. You asked about it earlier. She said maybe it's not the animal at all. It's part of the animal. It's part of the oyster. It's not. There's not an oyster here and the shell over here. It's part of the oyster. So the reason to say it's mutter is to say it's part of it's a bone. It's like a bone, or it's like a horn. One of those. It's something like that, right? That's our tzad to say. The only tzad to say that it's mutter is that. Well, but we don't do that in practice. In practice, we say the stuff made from animal bones, and making it into something edible is usher. So why do we make the calcium made out of oyster shells? Is it mutter? Make up your mind one way or the other. Okay, so I had one thought. I'm not. I don't think it's. I'm not. You'll see in the end why I don't think it's right, and I'll tell you. I think maybe a reason why it should be mutter. Maybe, and that's like this. The Mechaber says.
The calcium is not real achila.
It's a food ingredient, and neither is gelatin. What gelatin is not real achila either. It's an ingredient.
So it's a good kasha.
What?
It's a good kasha.
No, it's not. So that's the different B'chaim that things that are food ingredients are considered royal achila. Royal achila with black pepper. This is right. The Gemara says that black pepper is royal achila, and so is oil. Nobody eats black pepper.
That's not the same thing.
Because
black pepper is royal achila in a certain amount. If I take a grind up rocks and I put it and mix it into a food, you'll be able to eat it.
Okay. His real right is from Sa'ar. Okay, the Gemara says Sa'ar is not royal achila. Maybe even some hold this even nifsam yechilas kelev. It's not royal achila, and yet you're over on it for eating it, for owning it or eating it on Pesach. So Chaim Reiser says he says it's not because it's exeris akasim. Since it's royal chamei b'isas acheris, so it's like this super duper chametz, so it's also. Also, he says no. Pshat is that royal chamei b'isas acheris means it's an ingredient. And when you use things as an ingredient, that's also considered royal achila. A royal achila doesn't have to mean I eat it by itself. The pepper.
Calcium is a mineral. It's a rock. It happens to be humans have use out of this rock. Is it? Is so partial that it's like sour and black pepper.
So you're saying it's not. You're saying
iron is metal.
You're saying it's not even a food ingredient. We just sprinkle it into our food because we think it's good for us. Yeah. But
it's probably not the vitamin.
What do you say?
Is that to help the food or because it's good for
it's good for the person. It's like
that's like
and flour is not a food either. It just gives you energy. If you eat flour, then you have more energy. What's the difference between this and what? No, it's not actually. What is food? It means things that you eat that make you be able to function. So you eat calcium to make you function. It's not like it helps it process in the machinery. You eat calcium because it's good for one part of your body, and you eat pizza because it's not a different part of your body.
Like you said, iron. Does that make sense? Iron is a piece of metal, right?
Yeah, but it's something that you need. So you eat it because it's healthy for you. It's good for you. Just like eating a piece of bread is also good for you.
It says royal achila.
Achila people eat because there's no S. Because you're hungry, that's what you eat. Whatever.
Or you eat because
to me that this mineral over here has certain qualities.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought like that. Okay, I'm surprised. I'm surprised you say that. Well, let me say like this. According to Ramosha, you're for sure not going to help me. Okay, Ramosha says that it's awesome. Even all these bones are awesome with Rabbanan. You're answering only according to Rabbanan. Rabbanan said if I made it royal achila, if I turn it into royal achila,
the chamas of the bones. The chamas of the bones. It's part of an animal. It's whatever the house of the bones, but maybe. Never asked zinc. Let's see, Okay. I said iron. So if
it's part of an animal,
it's not good. What?
If it's part of an animal, why wouldn't it be usher? Why shouldn't it be usher?
Yeah, no, if it's part of an animal, maybe.
So that's the calcium is part of it. It's part of the oyster. Okay. It's interesting. I wouldn't have thought like that. Okay, so let me tell you one answer. One answer like this that I don't think is going to work out, and that's like this. The Mechaber says if you cook 6 things with milk. Your potter, and the Shach says you're awesome. It's awesome with the run, and they are shilya or gidim atzamas karnayim tafayim. The ones I read to you beforehand. Okay, so Ramosha says the Shulchan Aruch has
cook, or if you cook it, it's
cook it with milk. You cook with milk.
So it's not also to cook; it's also to eat.
It's also to eat it. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch had 6 cases. Okay, and the Shach says those 6 cases. The Shulchan Aruch says you're potter. No, I think he's talking about cooking. I think he's talking about cooking. I don't remember. It's the potter, and the Shach says, but it's aser. So Ramesh says like this: that din Shulchan Aruch is coming from a Gemara in Chulin. Kuf Yudal Amaf. Okay. In the Gemara, there aren't 6 cases. The Gemara says there are only 4 cases, and the 4 cases are Atzamas, Gidim, Karnaim, and Tlafayim. Okay. So Ramesh says, why are the 4 cases in the Gemara and the 6 cases in the Shulchan Aruch? So Ramesh says, when the Shach says it's Asam Midrabanan, he's only going on the 4 cases of the Gemara. And Ramesh has rayas to this. He says the other 2 cases that are not in the Gemara are not even Asam Midrabanan. Ramesh says, what's the difference? He says, when Chazam asked something Midrabanan, they would only ask something that at some place is called basar. In some din, this thing is considered basar. So since in some din it's considered basar, so they answered it also. But something that has no shaykhs to basar at all, and in no way is ever considered basar, that is not even asam d'rabanan. Okay, that's why the 2, and those 2 are shulya and ar. They have in no dinam are those considered basar, and therefore since shulya and ar are never considered basar, therefore those are not even asam d'rabanan. So if that would be correct, I'll finish our motion in a second. If that would be correct, then we could say is that this is what you meant. But we could say is that only bones. Moshe shows that bone. He says bones are considered basar. His reason why bones are considered basar is because bones are part of the meat. When you pick up a piece of meat, it has the bones in it. You say this is a piece of meat. He says and people use it for cooking in a way like basar. They stick it into the pot. He says, but the things on the outside, the exoskeleton, the shells that are on the outside. Those things are never considered basar. So just like Moshe says that Ar and Shulya are not basar, they wouldn't be asam d'rabanan. Maybe we could say is an exoskeleton is also not asam d'rabanan. Bones in general are asam d'rabanan because they're part of the meat. This is on the outside, so it would be mutter. So that's what we could have said according to what Moshe said. But Moshe himself says he brings a Prima Gadim who says not like that. Prima Gadim says that all 6 of them are asam d'rabanan. Not only the 4, but all 6 of them are asam d'rabanan. So Moshe he says, I think I'm right. He says, "L'maisa al kolpanim yesh lahachman ka Prima Gadim." So to be machman to Prima Gadim. So now you could say, okay, I'm going to skip I have a variation of that. I'm going to skip that. Okay, so let's skip that for now. So so I asked this question to a bunch of people. I said, how come we don't allow gelatin, but we do allow calcium? And the person who came back to me with a good answer was Rabbi L-cysteine. He said to me, he says, if you look at the Rambam, I read to you the Rambam quickly beforehand, that says that these things are asur. He says, when he says it's asur, he says these things are asur from the places, places that when you cut this thing, they bleed. Okay, blood bubbles, literally, mevatzis means like it bubbles out. I don't know why it says such a funny word, but anyway, blood bubbles out. It comes from the Gemara. The Gemara where he's coming from is talking about Inyan Tumah, okay, and it says that the nail, the only part of the nail that's considered food, Inyan being mitzaref to a shear, for a shear kazayas, is the part of the nail that's under the skin, because over there, or the horn, the part that it bleeds if you cut it, but the rest of it is not also, it's not considered part of the oichel. Okay, and the mechaber is made. You didn't probably hear this. I read it too quickly. The mechaber also says ikrei karnaim utlafayim, that's the same thing. The point is the base, the part at the bottom which is attached to the skin. That's the part where it bleeds. So he says so Rabbi Gersten said, he says, so the only things that are usher, so to speak, as bones that are usher, are the parts of the bones that would bleed, like a regular bone. If you cut a bone, it bleeds. But if you cut, there's no blood vessels in oyster shells, and therefore, if you cut those, they would not bleed. So those things are not even usher d'rabanan. Those would not be usher at all. It's a different than, so to speak, a bone. And then I saw in the Aruch Shulchan, he brings this. He says, "For karnayim tlafayim ritzuparnayim beroisham b'makam she'en adam bevatzbeitz loy shaykh leim teres oichel klal v'gam iser ein bezeh." It's not even usher d'rabanan. Okay. Now, and that also, if this is seemingly that it's correct, explains also why we use animal hair and feathers to make L-cysteine. Okay, you may have heard of that. L-cysteine is a amino acid that's used as a dough conditioner. So there are shilas about it because the feathers that they take off might be taken off with hot water and get blios of dam. There are different kinds of shilas, questions that come about it. But the feathers themselves that come from a chicken that was in a vela, it wasn't shechted, and their mutter, the reason why is for the same reason that when you break them, there's no blood vessels in them, they don't bleed. Okay, if you cut nails and feathers, they don't bleed at all. Nail at the base of your hair, follicle. There's a different part that's not the hair that bleeds, but the hair itself doesn't bleed. Okay, and that's meduyik. Let me just say for a second. This same Gemara says about mevatzit adam. The Gemara is saying it based on a Mishnah, and it's a Mishnah at the beginning of Taharos, and it says that the chartem and the tzipronayim are mitzaref with other foods. Frek the Gemara, how could they be mitzaref? They're eitz ba'alma. It's a piece you can eat a chartem, a beak, and a nail of an animal over a bird. You can't eat that. It's not royal chila. So the Gemara says no. It's talking about the ikre kanayim. It's the part that does bleed. Because that's this of mavasi zadam comes from that Gemara that says like that. Okay. Well, that same Mishnah that the Gemara is talking about also says that noitza and knofayim, which means feathers and small hairs. That's how they explain it. Okay. Those are completely mutter. Okay.
So why is this the right connected of Moises?
That one.
So hard bones supposedly would bleed.
No, because
unless that's what he's saying.
The hard bones would bleed. So you're saying hard bones should therefore be usher.
We have a description of which bones we're talking about. Which parts we're talking about, right?
No. So Primer says that whole din is only talking about soft bones b'chlal. Hard bones, it would be different if they bleed. Bleeding doesn't make a difference. Even the bones that we can even consider that he says are only the soft ones. The hard bones are not even in the parasha totally. They're completely mufka from the shayla. That's what Primer says. We're saying if we think that the Ram is talking about even hard bones also, then we could say, well, hard bones, but even hard bones that he says are only if they bleed. But Chaimer says you're not even talking about hard bones, you're only talking about soft bones. He's not Makar Shabbat says Adam.
We're getting rules over here. So then if it's talking
so you're saying
hard bones,
you're saying if Adam.
I mean, your question was not according to Chayroizer, right?
Right. So you're saying if that teaches us that that's the rule, it depends on bleeding and not bleeding, then that should be a right that it means only hard bones. That even hard bones. Yeah. I'm not sure. Okay, so so now back to where we are. Back to our din. I'm winding down. Back to our din. Our din said that there's no blias coming out of. We don't have to worry about blias coming out of bones. Okay, that means to say is even though we might say you've been listening to me the past while, why there may be isurim to eating bones. There may be isurim potentially, but the blias we don't have to worry about. Okay, and the Pri Megadim says, but it's like a getanosha. You can't eat the getanosha, but ein begidim b'noisen tam, which means there's not enough tam comes out of it to make a difference. It's always going to be batal, a little bit that comes out of it. So bones is the same thing, and he throws in, but that's not true if there's marrow. Okay, the Machaber says if there's marrow in the Machaber says if there's marrow in the bones, it doesn't count. It only if it's the bone itself. Okay, so this whole the question that the Machaber is talking about, the simplest case that it's negated to is if a person a piece of meat fell in, like I told you at the beginning. A piece of meat falls into a pot. You want to know if it's batal b'shishim or not. So the bone part of it doesn't count towards the bitul. You only have to count the meat part of it, the non-bone part of it to the bitul b'shishim. Okay. So let me give you some other cases. I'm going to quickly tell you. One is something called bone char, and that is when you make cane sugar. There's different ways to make sugar, but if you make cane sugar, then in order to improve the color of to whiten the sugar, they pass the sugar through something called bone char, which is charred bones. That's what it is, charred bones. There's no bone char stays in the sugar. I don't even think it's yatzal at this point. But even if it would be yatzal at this point, so it would be mutter, obviously because it's charred, so it's not royal chila. That's one reason. But what we've seen in our din is that it's mutter because bones, we don't have to worry about them being nurse and tam, but something else. So even if it would be yatzal at this point, we wouldn't be worried about nurse and tam. That's from the din of it. You should just know it's a vegan thing. There are vegans will not eat cane sugar because of the use of bone char. That's it's considered non-vegan because of that reason. Okay,
how does it impart a color to sugar?
It doesn't impart a color. It attracts the colorful part that's left in the cane sugar to itself, leaving the sugar white. Doesn't make it white. It's like a filter. It takes out the bad things, leaving the sugar in its white form. It's a filter. Yeah, it attracts other things to it.
There shouldn't be any bone char in the sugar.
There is no bone char in the sugar. There isn't. No, it just passes through. But
so what are the vegans worried about? Because they're using it.
Right. They don't want anybody. They don't want to do things that have to do with animals. It's not that eating it per se. Okay. Also, there's something called bone china. Real bone china actually has ashes of bones in it. Okay, so supposedly. So again, two reasons why it wouldn't be negated. We wouldn't worry about it. One is because it's burnt bones. It's ashes from bones. That's one reason. But also, because there's no Blios from them. I'll mention about the bone char. However long ago, in the Tzemach Tzedek, there was a shayla there. Then they used to whiten the sugar with blood. Okay, I don't know how that worked. He had the shayla. They talked about whether they could use it or not, and he also talked about the same things about being there some of gam and things like that. There's a truth about that, a well-known truth about that. Okay, just before I walk out, just 4 things that have other things to do with bones, not to get with our simon. One is B legs. The Ramah in Kuf Gimel says that B legs. We talked about this with Toloim. B legs have the same din as bones. Okay, they have the same kulas or dinim as bones. You don't have to tovel things we talked about this also. You don't have to talk about things. You don't have to tovel things that are made from bone. Things that are made from bone. This is a din in halacha beis. Bone can absorb tam. A bone, we don't push about the time it gives off, but it can absorb, and we don't do Hagal's keilim that it can be kasher also. So it absorbs and it can be kasher also. And last is there's something in Shmir Shabbos that says that if a person can read, they used to put chicken into their chalent. Okay, instead of I guess they couldn't afford meat, they put chicken in, and he said there's problems of chazara on if you take the chalent off the fire on Friday night. There's problems about putting it back onto the fire because so Rosh Zaman had this thing that you shouldn't put it back on because the bones are not fully cooked, or they get more cooked when you put them back on. So it's an official shayla, and Rav Moshe wasn't so excited about that. So that's another thing.